For God, washerwoman, stronghold, mother hen tending her young. The multiplicity of these images reminds us that God is bigger and stranger and closer than we can understand, using just a couple old favorite pictures. So tonight, God is the vine, the root. A reading from the Gospel of John. Jesus says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word I have spoken to you. Abide in me, as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples." And in the letter to the Romans, we read, "If the root is holy, the branches also are holy. But if some of the branches were broken off and you, a wild olive shoot, were grafted in their place to share the rich root of the olive tree, do not boast over the branches. If you do boast, remember that it is not you that support the root, but the root that supports you." So I grew up surrounded by agriculture, but it was not corn and soybeans and wheat. And you can ask me sometime about what it was like to move to the Midwest and try to understand the cycle of agriculture here. I was a little confused. My home is a valley that is home to the oldest continually family-owned winery in the U.S. and about 20 other wineries. Almond Avenue School at the end of my block was named for the nut orchards there. Olivina Street was named for the olive groves. The house on the corner of Hillcrest still has remnants of the old walnut grove that was there. Backyards are full of citrus trees, and the neighboring hills and pockets in them were home to the places we'd go pick sweet cherries and apples and peaches in the orchards so that we could fill our freezer. And so the agriculture around us has long and deep roots. And most of those vineyards and orchards and backyard trees have one characteristic in common. About 6, 7, 8 inches off the ground, the trunk changes. And all the trees look just like this. There's one kind of texture down at the bottom, and then something different comes up. Because the truth is, human beings have gotten a little bit picky about fruit over thousands of years. We want seedless oranges. We want those nice English walnuts. We want hybrid apples that keep really well. We want those grape varieties from France to make the right kind of wine. We want trees that don't grow too tall. Those are all great things. But those trees, those plants, if you put them in the dirt there in California, they're not going to get very far. Trees that are bred for good fruit might not be real great at producing the kind of roots that keep a tree from falling over. Vines that are from France, well, they cannot survive the parasites in the soil that suck the juice out of a grape plant. And fruits from the kind of climates that actually get rain aren't going to do real well in the hard, rocky soil where I grew up. So that English walnut that comes out of its shell so neatly when you crack it, that's grafted right about here onto a black walnut that's a native species. And let me tell you, you try to get something to eat out of that black walnut. It's not going to happen. You will crush the fruit before you get that thing cracked open. And so it got a nice set of roots. It grows really well. And so cut it off and graft the kind of fruit or the kind of nut you want on top of it. Delicious apple varieties are grafted onto roots that will keep them a useful size. We know that around here too. And nearly every vineyard the whole world over has American roots. Because that little parasite, it turns out it's invasive and it made its way everywhere. And only the native grapes in America can withstand it. And so even in France and Italy, their wonderful special wine varieties are grafted onto American California wild grape rootstock. The life is in the roots. The life is in the roots. So even sometimes these vineyard planters, these winery owners, when they want to change a variety, they could rip up all their vines, plant new little seedlings, and wait 3 or 4 years. Or they can come through and cut off those grafted varieties, plunk down another new one on top of those old roots, and within a year, they're already producing something new because the life is in the roots, not in the fruit. Paul says, remember, it is not you that support the root, but the root that supports you. When we're tied into the root, there's life. We all know that leaves have the chemistry in them to be able to make energy out of sunshine, but only in the presence of water. Jesus reminds us we can't get our own water. We can't create our own life. The life is in the root. When we're grafted into Christ, we're tied into that life, the love and the peace, the forgiveness and power that we need to live, to grow, to bear fruit. All of that is there in Jesus, the life in the root. But of course, if you are like me and most human beings, you want to look at the leaves and the fruit. The root's kind of ugly and gnarly, and it isn't eye-catching. Our hope and our security, we tend to look for them in the showy bits, don't we? The world has taught us to trust the packaging, the neighborhood that we can manage to live in, the car to drive, the brand of phone we carry, the sorts of activities we support our children in. All of these things we're tempted to rely on. And it's easy to focus on the fruit, right? In what we're accomplishing, in what our growth looks like, in whatever we think we can control or take credit for, whether it's a successful project at work or just healthy children, working with our favorite community groups, all good things. Easy, so easy for them to become the thing, isn't it? The thing we hang on to, the thing we put our hopes in. We really like to look at the leaves and the fruit. And we put our hopes there. We also tend to find all of our sorrow there, don't we? Our despair when our life does not look the way we thought it was going to look. When we have invested our heart and resources in good and worthy work, in hopeful projects that will make an impact on the world, some squirrel comes by, takes one bite and throws it in the corner. Some deer comes and chews the bark off of the best branch, or we entwine our branches in a power line and NIPSCO comes by and cuts off half the tree. And it seems like all is lost, right? But the life is in the root. Maybe in the spring you've noticed all the bloomin' maple trees that sprout up after the little whirligigs come down. A little bit later, there are all these little tiny ones coming up everywhere. And If you get to them real quick, you might be all right. But there are always, in our yard at least, there are always the sneaky ones that kind of grow along the fence line or kind of up in some other shrubs, and they elude your notice just long enough to put down a proper root. You can go and pull them up as soon as they're big enough to sort of get your hand on them real well. And pull them up. You know what they do? They break off right at the soil, don't they? And then back they come next spring. And this time you think, okay, I'm going to pull again, and I'm going to get a really good grip, and I'm going to wear a glove. And that time, the whole bark layer comes off, and there's this little exposed stick, and you think, surely removing an organism's entire skin should do it in. But next spring, back it comes, right? It still won't come up. Its roots have really kind of tangled into everything now. And I get my little shears out, and I'm going to chop it. And I kind of poke them down and get them nice and dirty under the soil. And back it comes the next spring. Last year, my father was around, and I was grumbling about that one that I've done this year after year with. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to paint Roundup on the top of it after you chop it. Maybe that'll do it in. He's a chemist. He believes in better living through chemistry. Surely that will be the last word on this tree. We're going to cut it off. We're going to paint it with poison. The life is in the root. Up it comes again, right? Jesus gives us such a gorgeous image for our life together. I am the vine. Abide in me as I abide in you. The cross is God's promise that what means death to us is not the end for God. That cut off, cut down, painted with poison is not the last word. The cross is God's promise that there is life in the root, life that we are powerless to stop. And we're tied into that root. What a gift, huh? We don't do our own growing. The life's in the root. All our faults and our failings and all the fragileness of the world, those things that chop us off at the base, the things that seem certain to have the last word. Truth is, we don't deal with our living and our dying either. The life is in the root. Remember that it is not you that support the root, but the root that supports you. Lent is our invitation into a reset, returning to God. Noticing where in our lives we've turned into cut flowers, temporarily maybe hydrated, but with no future. Jesus, our vine, our root, means we don't have to go looking to find our own root. The vine has come to us. The vine has claimed us and joins to us in a way that means hope and life. So in just a moment, when we pause, before we share our affirmation together, close your eyes. Take a couple of breaths. Rest, abide, entrust yourself to the root that supports you. The life is in the root.